Okay, let's talk about that adorable little ball of fluff you brought home.
Hmm.
The one that's maybe right now scaling your curtains like a tiny furry ninja.
Or ambushing your ankles from under the sofa. Yeah.
Exactly. Or maybe your favorite chair is suddenly looking a bit shredded.
Uh-huh. The classic scratching post situation.
So what on earth is going on? Is this just, normal kitten stuff? Or is your kitten actually destined for a life of feline delinquency?
Well, that's what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into a whole stack of source material research papers, expert articles, behavioral notes,
Right.
all trying to help us understand these behaviors, the ones owners often see as, let's say, undesirable in kittens.
Mhm.
We're looking at the whole period, pretty much from birth right up through puberty.
And our mission here for this deep dive is basically to pull out the key insights from all that expert stuff.
Yeah.
We want to get a handle on why kittens do the things they do, what's just them being kittens, versus what might actually need a bit of, intervention.
And critically, what you, the listener, can realistically do about it.
Exactly. Without getting totally bogged down in technical jargon, we want the useful bits.
And this material, it's important to say, it's grounded in veterinary science, behavioral science perspective. So it's solid stuff we're working with.
Good.
Okay, let's unpack it.
So first things first. One of the biggest takeaways, and honestly, it's kind of a relief, right? Most of these so-called pediatric behavior problems, the sources say they're actually normal. They're species-typical behaviors.
That's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
The material is really consistent on this. The issue isn't usually the behavior itself being abnormal for a cat.
Right.
These totally normal actions become problems when they don't quite fit our human lifestyles or our expectations.
Or when they get amplified somehow.
Exactly, when they escalate or get misdirected because the kitten isn't getting the right kind of social interaction, or maybe their environment just isn't stimulating enough.
And time frame-wise, we're mostly talking about kittens between, 6 weeks old-ish?
Yeah, roughly 6 weeks when they're really mobile and exploring, up to about 52 weeks. So that whole first year, basically. Kittenhood through adolescence.
Okay.
And while, yes, environment and early learning are huge factors, the sources do mention genetics can, nudge things a bit.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, there's some evidence suggesting, for example, that the father's temperament might influence how friendly or bold a kitten turns out to be.
Huh. Okay. So understanding it's often normal is step one. But what does this problematic normal actually look like day to day?
Yeah, what are the signs?
What does the material say are the common ways kittens get themselves and their owners into trouble?
Okay, so the sources break it down into a few key areas. Play aggression is a really big one.
The biting and scratching during play?
Exactly. It looks like hunting, the stalking, chasing, pouncing, swatting, biting, all normal play actions. But in healthy, normal play, the bites are inhibited. They don't really hurt or break skin, and the claws are usually kept in. The problem is when that play becomes uninhibited.
Ouch.
Yeah, leading to actual injuries, bites or scratches that break the skin. And ambushes are super common with this, often silent attacks from nowhere.
Got it. And then there's just the sheer chaos.
Yes. Excessive or destructive play, that's often the solo stuff, the zoomies.
Running laps around the living room at 3 a.m.
That's the one. Running, jumping, climbing furniture, curtains, batting things around really intensely, knocking stuff off tables.
Or mug collection.
Right. This is where you get household damage and, definitely disrupted sleep.
Okay, what else?
Scratching, again, totally normal, essential cat behavior. They need to do it.
For their claws, right, and marking territory.
Exactly. Claw maintenance, stretching, leaving visual marks, scent marks. It only becomes a problem for us when they choose the sofa or the wallpaper or sometimes even people's legs.
Right. Not ideal. And the last category.
Fearful behaviors. This is a spectrum. It can be mild, like just hiding or avoiding people.
Or more intense.
Yeah, it can escalate to hissing. Classic fearful body language. Big dilated pupils, fur standing on end, crouching defensively, just generally unsocial behavior.
And can that become aggression?
Sometimes, yes. If they feel trapped or really threatened, it can tip over into aggression towards other animals or people.
Okay, so those are the whats. How do the sources connect these back to the whys? Why does play become aggressive, for instance?
Good question. For play aggression aimed at people or other pets, a major factor is often lack of appropriate social interaction early on.
Like not learning the rules from mom or siblings.
Precisely. not learning bite inhibition or social cues. And this is a big one. The sources stress it gets way worse if owners actually encourage it, even accidentally, by using their hands or fingers or feet as toys during playtime. Wiggling fingers, letting the kitten attack their hand.
I can see how that happens. Seems fun at first.
It does. Until it doesn't. Lack of other better play outlets is also a big contributor there.
And the destructive play, the object-focused stuff.
That's often just normal solitary play energy spilling out. It naturally ramps up around 7 or 8 weeks. The problem part is usually about where that energy gets directed if there aren't enough good outlets.
Makes sense. What about the fear? Where does that usually come from?
Fear behaviors often stem from poor early socialization, meaning not enough positive exposure to different people, sights, sounds, during that critical window, roughly before 7 to 9 weeks old.
So kittens hidden away too much early on?
Potentially, yes. Or early traumatic experiences, abuse, being attacked by another animal. And the sources are very clear. Harsh correction techniques from owners can absolutely create or worsen fear.
Like yelling or swatting?
Exactly. Yelling, swatting, chasing the kitten. Those things can really backfire and make them fearful. So thinking about all that, it kind of leads to the next question, doesn't it? Are some kittens just, born more likely to have these issues?
Or is it all about how they're raised? What do the sources say about risk factors? Who's more likely to end up ambushing ankles?
It seems like a bit of both, but environment and experience play a huge role. The sources definitely list specific risk factors.
Okay, like what? For the aggressive play towards people?
Risk factors there include being the only cat in the home.
No sibling to practice on.
Right. Also being an orphan or hand-reared, being adopted out too young, the sources mentioned, before 6 weeks, specifically not having enough good toys or playtime.
And the owner playing rough.
And, yeah, that owner encouragement of playing with hands or feet is a big one.
Okay. What about the destructive play? The curtain climbing?
Often linked to just not enough enrichment, not enough toys, things to climb, interactive play, and, again, sometimes being the only pet, with no outlet for that social play energy.
And scratching the furniture.
That was usually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Lack of good, appealing scratching posts or surfaces that the cat is allowed to use.
Makes sense. And for the fearfulness?
The biggest risks highlighted are, again, that lack of early positive socialization. Also, using punishments or the kitten having traumatic experiences.
You mentioned weaning age earlier, too.
Yes. The sources specifically point out that kittens taken from their mother before 2 weeks old can be significantly more fearful and potentially aggressive later on compared to those weaned at a more typical age. That's a really critical early window. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. If you're seeing these behaviors, how do vets or behaviorists figure out exactly what's going on? How's it diagnosed?
Right, because aggression can mean different things.
Exactly. The material stresses careful differentiation. For play aggression, the key is telling apart that normal, maybe slightly rough, but inhibited kitten play from the genuinely uninhibited kind that causes injury.
So looking at the intensity, the consequences.
Pretty much. How hard are the bites? Are claws out? Is skin being broken? For the excessive destructive play or the scratching issues, diagnosis is usually more observational. You see the couch getting shredded,
Yeah, that one's kind of obvious.
But for the fearful defensive behaviors, it's absolutely crucial to rule out medical causes first.
Oh, right, like they could be sick or in pain.
Exactly. The sources mention things like central nervous system problems, hidden pain, metabolic issues, even things like hyperthyroidism in some cases.
Wow, okay.
And interestingly, they note that a really frightened kitten might even show high blood sugar on tests, just from the stress response. So medical checkup is step one for fear.
Okay, this is the crucial part then. We understand the what and the why, maybe the who. What can we actually do? What do the sources recommend for treatment and maybe even better, prevention?
Right, the action plan. The good news is the sources are pretty clear that a lot of this is manageable or even preventable.
Phew.
The absolute starting point, stressed across the material, is owner education.
Understanding what's going on.
Yes, owners need to understand these are mostly normal behaviors, just inconvenient sometimes. And managing expectations is key. The sources say many kittens will naturally grow out of some of these more intense phases with the right guidance.
So patience and perspective first. What next?
Environmental enrichment. This comes up again and again. Make the kitten's world interesting and cat-appropriate.
Meaning?
Lots of different types of toys, things they can bat, chase, carry, pounce on, and rotate them. Keep it novel.
Good tip.
Offer vertical space. Cats love to climb and perch high, so windowsills, cat trees, shelves, boxes are always a hit.
Oh yeah, boxes are magic.
And critically for scratching, provide good scratching options. Variety is key. Different materials like sisal, cardboard, carpet, wood, different orientations, vertical posts, horizontal pads, and put them where the cat actually hangs out.
Not hidden in a back room.
Exactly. Make them appealing.
Okay, enrichment. What about direct interaction?
Super important. Interactive play. Daily sessions where you engage the kitten.
But not with your hands, right?
Absolutely crucial point. The play must be directed away from your body parts. Use wand toys, feather teasers, tossable toys, even laser pointers used safely. Let them hunt, stalk, chase, pounce, but on the toy, not you. Got it. So let's drill down. Specific strategies for that play aggression, the biting and scratching people or other pets.
Okay, number one rule. Hammer home in the sources. Never, ever use hands, fingers, feet, any body part to initiate or encourage play. Full stop.
That teaches them the wrong target.
Precisely. If play does get too rough, if they bite too hard or claws come out, immediately stop the game.
Just walk away.
Walk away. Withdraw attention. Some sources suggest a brief, startling noise, not scary, just enough to interrupt like a sharp hiss sound you make or dropping keys nearby. Then ignore them for a bit.
Interrupt, withdraw.
Okay. And learn the signals. Watch for those signs of an impending pounce, the big pupils, the crouch, the wiggly butt, the swishing tail.
But the pre-attack sequence.
Yeah. And before they launch at you, redirect that energy. Toss a toy, wiggle the wand toy away from you, or you could even cue a different behavior they know, like sit, and reward that instead. Break the pattern.
Redirect. That makes sense. What about getting another cat? Interestingly, yes. The material suggests that sometimes the most effective way to deal with play aggression, especially towards people, might be getting a second kitten.
A playmate of their own.
Exactly. Similar age, similar temperament ideally. They can roughhouse with each other and learn boundaries that way.
Good point. Anything else for managing the ouch factor?
Simple one. Keep their claws trimmed regularly. It won't stop the play, but it makes it much less likely to cause injury.
Okay. Now, the sources mentioned declawing. That's a controversial topic.
It is, and the sources acknowledge the humane concerns many people have. But they also point to studies indicating it doesn't seem to cause long-term psychological harm to the cat itself.
So when might it be considered, according to this material?
It's framed as an option in severe cases, specifically where the behavior puts the kitten at serious risk of being relinquished, given up to a shelter, or worse, or for owners who are immunocompromised, where a bad scratch could be a serious health risk.
So basically as a last resort to prevent relinquishment?
That seems to be the context presented, preferable to the cat losing its home. They also caution against using things like spray bottles or startling noises if other cats are around, as it can create fear or aggression between the cats.
Right, redirected fear. Okay, what about managing the destructive chaos and the inappropriate scratching?
A lot of it's environmental management again. Kitten-proof. Put away fragile things, valuable things, potentially dangerous things they might knock over or chew.
Secure the breakables?
Yep. The sources mention using booby traps, like motion-activated air sprays or sticky mats, selectively for specific off-limit spots, like countertops or a particular piece of furniture.
But cautious.
Very cautiously. Overusing them could just make the kitten generally anxious. It's for very targeted spots.
And for the scratching, you mentioned providing good posts.
Yes, that's key. Make the right places super appealing. Tall, stable posts. Different textures. Put them in high traffic areas. Use catnip, treats, praise, or play around the post to encourage use.
And make the wrong places unappealing.
Exactly. Double-sided sticky tape on furniture corners. Smooth plastic sheeting things. Cats generally don't like the feel of on their paws.
And trim claws again.
Definitely helps minimize damage while you're redirecting them. And the points about declawing apply here too, same context. Humane concerns versus studies, consideration in severe cases where relinquishment is a real risk.
Okay, now for the tough one. The fearful kittens. Especially those scared because of poor socialization or trauma.
Yeah, this requires a different approach. The number one thing the sources emphasize here is patience. Loads of it.
No quick fixes.
No. It's about gradual exposure to people, but never forcing interaction. Let the kitten control the pace entirely.
So let them hide.
They need a safe hiding spot, absolutely.
Yeah.
But ideally one where they can still peek out and observe human activity from a distance to slowly get used to it.
And how do you make progress?
Counterconditioning is usually essential. You need to change their emotional response, associate people with really, really good things. High-value food and treats are the go-to. Start by just placing the food near their hiding spot while you're sitting quietly nearby. Gradually, over days or weeks, move it closer to you. Maybe eventually offer it from your hand, let them eat near you, or even on your lap, but only if they choose to approach.
Let them make the first move.
Always. Using long wand toys can be great here too. You can play with them from a distance, building positive associations without the pressure of close contact initially.
What are the big don'ts?
The sources are adamant. Let the kitten make the advances. Do not grab them, hold them against their will, or corner them. And never block their escape route back to their safe place. That just reinforces the fear.
Makes sense. What if the fear is because of past punishments? Like the owner yelled at them?
According to the sources, that's often simpler to fix, relatively speaking. First step, identify what those punishments were: yelling, swatting, chasing, and stop them immediately.
Just cease and desist.
Completely. Replace them entirely with positive methods, rewarding good behavior, redirecting unwanted behavior, managing the environment.
Gotcha. Any other general tips? The sources mentioned diet briefly.
Yeah, just a brief note that sometimes providing multiple small meals throughout the day rather than one or two big ones can potentially have a calming effect or help manage some behavioral issues. It wasn't super specific on which ones, though.
Interesting. So tying it all together, prevention sounds key.
Hugely key. The sources really emphasize that so many of these issues can be prevented or minimized with the right start.
Which involves?
Early, positive handling and interaction with various people during that critical window, roughly 3 to 7 weeks. And also, crucially, exposure to well-socialized, tolerant adult cats between about 4 and 18 weeks.
Learning cat manners from other cats.
Exactly. Learning bite inhibition, appropriate play signals. And owners need to consciously avoid that rough body part play and definitely steer clear of using punishment.
Okay, so let's say you're dealing with one of these issues. You're applying the strategies from the sources. What's the outlook? What kind of prognosis does the material suggest? Do they always get better?
It really varies, according to the sources. Depends heavily on the specific issue, how ingrained it is, and how consistently the owner implements the right strategies.
Right, so for just the normal high-energy play stuff.
If you manage it well, redirect it appropriately, prognosis is generally good. And like we said, that intense kitten energy often does mellow out naturally as they mature anyway.
But what about the uninhibited, aggressive play towards people? The kind that actually hurts?
That one has a more guarded prognosis. The sources warn it can potentially get worse or become more serious as the cat gets older and stronger if not managed very carefully.
So early intervention is critical there.
Yes. Prognosis is better if it's caught early and addressed with owner counseling and management, or especially, like we discussed, if a suitable kitten playmate is introduced.
Okay. How about scratching problems?
Generally a good prognosis if you successfully redirect them to posts they like and consistently reward them for using those appropriate spots. It might lessen with age, but some cats just have a strong scratching drive and might need ongoing management.
And the fear-based behaviors, from lack of socialization or trauma.
That has the most variable prognosis, unfortunately. Some kittens with immense patience and the right approach might slowly acclimate over months or even years. But the sources are realistic. Some may never become fully comfortable lap cat-type pets.
Especially if the issues started very early or were severe.
Exactly. The longer socialization was delayed after that initial 3-week period, or the more intense the trauma, generally the poorer the prognosis for becoming a really outgoing, confident cat.
But what about the fear caused just by bad correction technique?
That's often more hopeful. If the punishments weren't too severe or prolonged, and they are stopped completely and replaced with positive methods, those fear responses can often resolve relatively quickly.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big picture from this deep dive into the sources? It sounds like mostly your crazy kitten is just being a kitten.
That's a huge part of it, yeah. Understanding that these wild behaviors are often rooted in perfectly normal, instinctual feline drives. Exploring, hunting, playing, learning.
And the key takeaways for owners.
Recognizing its often normal instinct. Understanding the massive impact of early socialization and the environment you provide. Remembering the golden rule. Your hands are not toys.
Definitely.
And knowing that you have tools. Redirection, enrichment, patience. Lots of patience. And sometimes, yeah, getting a second kitten can be a game changer.
Patience really seems like the watchword, especially for those fear issues.
Absolutely. And this material, it really throws a spotlight on something interesting, doesn't it? That kind of inherent conflict sometimes between what's totally normal for a cat and what we find convenient or acceptable in our homes.
Yeah, how our expectations shape our perception of problems.
Exactly. And how much our own actions, or maybe lack of action early on, can channel those natural behaviors into directions we struggle with.
So here's maybe the really interesting thought to leave people with. Drawing from all this material, how much of what we call a problem behavior in our kittens is actually just us not fully understanding their fundamental cat needs and drives? And flipping that, how much of it could potentially be avoided altogether just by being more proactive and thoughtful about shaping their world and our interactions right from the very beginning?
Something to definitely think about next time you're untangling a kitten from the blinds.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.